Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see the thumbnail, what if Ichigo was in high school DxD part 4. Please subscribe and like for part 5 and the story belonged to Will the Programmer. Chapter 4 Death Save the Strawberry. Karakura Town, Orihime's house. Kurosaki-kun. I definitely felt Ichigo's Ryutsu. There's no mistaking that, but how? Did Ichigo's powers come back on their own? I'm almost certain that the others didn't pick up on it, being how fast it popped up then disappeared. One thing is for certain, it felt different, like when he used his Bankai in the world of living for the first time. It felt dark and really heavy. Did they figure a way to restore Ichigo's powers? No, that can't be right either. Rukia would have let me know something. It's only been a couple months since then. The death saved the strawberry, 7 months ago, 5 months after the winter war ended. Everyone in the world of the living has advanced to the second year of school. The beautiful Orihime Inoue is sweeping her brother's grave, and she tells her brother about how everyone's doing and what has happened since the last time they spoke when he was a hollow. Big brother, I started working recently, you believe me, but it's at this sweet shop called Abcookies. The reason for this was because I love sweets and they always put me in a better mood, especially when I frequently visited this shop. It got to the point where people on the street started asking me where I bought all the sweets when I went home. Apparently that ended making business get better and the store owner decided to hire me then and there. Oh yeah, my friend Ryu is substituting for Ichigo as substitute Shinigami. Urahara originally wanted him to take over the job, but Ryu believes that Ichigo will not be willing to remain powerless and will definitely gain his powers back, so he's only substituting for him for the time being. I'm sure Ichigo will gain his powers again. Also, Ryu became the student council president during the last semester of our first year at Karakura High School. This is mostly because the previous president, Kigo's sister Mizuo, thought that he looked like a student council president the first time she saw him, so she came to his apartment and gave the sleeve thing to him. Although he was unwilling at first, Mizuo was persistent, and when she mentioned that the student council president could buy things for half price at the school store, he gave in. This is how he became student council president. My other friend Sato has started to learn boxing. The reason for this is because he critically examined his own abilities after the war, and thought that his foundations weren't as strong as those who had trained before, like Ichigo, Ryu, and the Shinigami. That was why he wanted to start again from the beginning. Tatsuki was the same in that aspect. Her experiences made her instantly raise the amount of training she did. She always trained until very late. When it was time for finals, adding studying to it all made her not get enough sleep and end up with dark circles around her eyes. I always tell her not to try so hard, since Tatsuki says that she only got second place at last year's competition because her right hand was broken. Otherwise she could have even beaten up the boys. However, now that Tatsuki's seen Ichigo and the others fight, she's discovered that she can't beat anyone, so she wants to get stronger and not have to experience anything like that again. Even if she doesn't become strong enough to protect anyone, she won't be deluded anymore either. During the 1 month when Ichigo was in a coma in the Soul Society, I stayed with him the whole time, helping the other Soul Reapers heal. When I finally went back to the world of the living, Captain Unohana gave me a spirit phone, so I'm now able to talk to everyone in Soul Society. So from then on I kept in touch with them. However, brother, Ichigo's been extremely bored ever since. At school he would always stare at places where spirits used to appear, but he couldn't see anything at all. He's tried to convince himself that this was the life he'd wanted all along, forcing himself to smile. At first I was very relieved that he lost his powers, since he wouldn't get hurt anymore, and because I always felt extremely hurt or in pain whenever he got hurt. But now, faced with an Ichigo like this, I don't know what to do. Silently sobbing, the soul pager buzzes. At this time, Rukia sends a text, and Orihime decides to go ask her for help. Soul Society. As Orihime makes her way into the Soul Society to meet up with Rukia, she finds out that she had just recently been promoted and at this time has been a lieutenant for only a couple of days, to which Orihime smiles, congratulating her. We should celebrate, Rukia, congratulations. Rukia smiles back and responds. Maybe another time, we got other matters to take care of first, come with me, Orihime. She then proceeds to take Inoue to the 13th Division's training grounds, where the two of them sit beneath the cherry blossoms, eating super expensive food prepared by the Kuchiki family. Inoue comments that Rukia's gloves are very pretty, and Rukia says that they're a gift from her brother Byakuya. He was also the one who recommended that she become a lieutenant in the first place. Rukia, has anything changed since you became a lieutenant? This leaves Rukia thinking about how to reply to Orihime's question of, has anything changed since you became a lieutenant? That's when Shinji Hiriko shows up donning a Captain Haori. Shinji-san, you're a captain now, how should I address you? Shinji smiles and tells her to just call him the same as before. That's when Hiriko sits down telling her about what happened to each of the wizards and what has happened since the Winter War ended. First up, Shinji decides it's best to explain the Hinamori situation to Inoue. About a month ago, I went down to the 4th Division to see Hinamori, who was towards the end of her care recovering, and we started talking about Sosuke Aizen. To cut a long story short, I told her what happened with him because she was kept in the dark and told her about taking on the role of captain of the 5th Division again. After we talked for a while, a true captain-lieutenant pair was born. When she returned to the division, Hinamori worked so hard, most likely as a way to cope with the thought that Aizen was a traitor. I had to tell her that she needed to rest. Her way of doing things reminded me of Aizen when he was my lieutenant. Aizen back then was a reformer and really did make things better for the division members, so he left behind more than just a blackened name. Just the other day, the Institute's president of research and development went on trial. As you are aware, Central 46's court is the highest judicial organ in Seoul society, second in power only to the Seoul King office, which is run by the Zero Division. Mayuri was summoned to court as the accused of a certain incident that occurred a while ago. But none of the researchers or captains were worried about the outcome. Not because they didn't care. They either respected Mayuri as head of research or that was their captain. No, that's not entirely correct. It's because they knew that Central 46 couldn't judge Mayuri currently. When I asked Akon what Mayuri was on trial for, he answered it's about Mayuri making several 12th Division soldiers blow themselves up, during the time when Kurosaki first appeared in Seoul society. The 12th Division also had members who weren't institute researchers. Mayuri had deemed this to be a good way to make use of those soldiers. This made Orihime freeze up because she was there when it happened, so how could she possibly forget that situation? This incident had happened quite a while ago, but Central 46 didn't have time and capacity until now. First, the previous members had all been murdered by Aizen, then the Urankar ordeal happened, and then, after Aizen had been sentenced to the Muken, they had spent more than several months arguing about the fate of the wizards. The new Central 46 can't condemn Mayuri for experimenting on Quincy's because that had been authorized by the old Central 46. Akon surmised that the new Central 46's true motive is to try and strike their president down with this self-destruct incident. The other researchers agree. They're not impressed. Most of them were originally residents of the Nest of Maggots. I have to admit that from a normal person's perspective, Mayuri may belong in prison. Akon says that Central 46 isn't thinking in ethical terms, not truly. It's the same as when they stopped the project of developing mod souls, Project Spearhead. They're simply scared of weapons falling into enemy hands. If they did care, they would never have ordered things like the execution of holofeed captains without even checking the facts properly. Shinji's expression could be seen as being angry when he said that, but no one could blame him for it. Akon said nothing has changed. If it had, then Central 46 would call Urahara back. But they're too scared that Urahara holds a grudge for being falsely accused. Also that the current Central 46 is bringing Mayuri to court in order to dangle the promise of a reduction of penalty in front of him to make him their tool. Moreover, Central 46 benefits a lot from the Development Institute. They wouldn't send its president to prison quickly. Even if Mayuri was sent to Muken, he'd be happy with the opportunity to dissect his fellow prisoners. Are there other prisoners besides Aizen in Muken? To which Shinji starts thinking if it's okay to divulge this information. There should be a few. Muken was the lowest underground prison, level 8. It held the worst criminals who, due to circumstances, could not undergo execution by the Tsukyoku. Another prisoner was a man named Soya Azashiro, a person who was sentenced to over 10,000 years in prison, a man who went by the title of the 8th Kenpachi. He became the 8th Kenpachi after killing the 7th Kenpachi Kuroyoshiki in a duel, also becoming the captain of the 11th Division. During his time as a captain, he used the power of his Bankai to keep track of everything that occurred with the Seraite, being able to see and hear all that would happen and be said, and would go on to stage a coup d'état against the Gotei 13 several years after becoming a captain. During which time, every captain except for Shunsui Kyoraku and Jashiro Yukitaki attempted to subdue the rogue Shinigami, but to no avail. None of their attacks would do any damage to him. Because of this event, the Royal Guard were forced to act and apprehend the rogue. His Bankai is just as terrifying as Aizen's Kyoka Sugestu. But that's a story for another time. Next up is Hiyori, who very much still dislikes Shinigami and isn't willing to return to Soul Society. I do believe if Hakafuna was still around she would have returned, as she acted like a mother to Hiyori Surugaki during her time in the Gote 13, and Hiyori felt the same way. Hiyori believes that I'm betraying them. Others who stayed with her in the living world are Hachigan, who still needs to maintain the barrier, and Love, who wouldn't go to a world where he couldn't read Jump magazines. Lisa and Mashiro sometimes go to see them. Kensai became the 9th division captain again, to which Shuhei had no objections and was happy Kensai would be the captain of the division again. Mashiro wanted to be his lieutenant again, but when she was given another job, ultra-radical scoop editor, responsible for reporting on strange occurrences in both worlds, she instantly agreed. The editor of the Seraite Communications is still Hisagi. It seems like he'll have to continue on since Kensai can't be bothered with it. Lisa's started up a bookstore in Kuakaku's territory selling books from the living world. However, they're mostly porn, and quite popular among the male Shinigami. She's saved up enough money to build herself a house in Rukongai, called Shungagoden. Next up is Rose and Kira Izuru. Kira initially was unable to accept anyone else to become the captain, replacing Jin Ichimaru, but gradually opened up, becoming closer to Rose. Rose likes to take walks, and Kira hears his singing about nostalgia and melancholy. There was this one time where Kira invited him into the guest lounge, and Rose took out a violin that he had hidden in there. Since the lieutenant back when he was a captain did not allow him to perform, Rose had changes done to the room so he could hide his violin in there. When Jin was captain, he only planted a single persimmon tree. When it was time to make dried persimmons, he would hand over all the division duties to Kira, and lecture about his methods to stray Shinigami walking by. Rose said that they should continue to make dried persimmons this year, which made Kira feel very moved. The only proof that Jin ever existed was this one persimmon tree. Even if Kira suffered a lot because of Jin's betrayal, he still didn't want to break off that relationship that he held dear to him, just like in Shuhei's case with Tosen. When Kira arrived back from the storage area with a ladder, he found Rose surrounded by a ton of people, all of whom are willing to help and are thankful that there's still an opportunity to make dried persimmons. Because they're still able to do things that they're accustomed to, the division gets livelier every day. Rose continued to perform on his instrument. Even if it's noisy, it still helps the 3rd division develop again along a better path. Beep, beep, looks like I just received a text from Hinamori. I ought to be heading back. Rukia then asks Inoue what she wanted to talk about since they were interrupted by Shinji, not that she minded anyways. Kurosaki-kun has been troubled all this time. Without his powers, he's been lost and confused. He says that this is the life that he's always wanted, with such a lonely smile on his face, and it hurts to see him broken like this. I want to do something for Kurosaki-kun, but there's nothing I can do. Inoue told Rukia she tried to use her powers to bring Ichigo's Shinigami powers back, but she couldn't do it. Thinking back to his lonely smile, Orihime feels so hurt that she starts to break down and cry. Which leads to Rukia patting her on the back and tells her, Ichigo has always fought in order to protect something. This is the foundation behind all of his actions. Now faced with the ordinary struggles of people without any power, he shouldn't ever lose. So he should still be able to protect many people. It was true that he was still able to protect a lot of people after he lost his powers. He even received a certificate of thanks from the police for good deeds he did during that time. However, he already knows. There are still things that he can't protect with only an ordinary human's abilities. To Ichigo, whose determination to protect something is so much stronger than other people's, this must be pain that is extremely hard to bear. Orihime wanted to do something, and Rukia felt the same way. She wanted to do something immediately, no matter what it took. She made the determination to bring Ichigo's powers back, and told Inoue to just leave it to her. 2 hours later, after seeing Orihime off, Rukia went back to her barracks to take care of some business she needed to take care of before she went to do something about the Ichigo situation. When it was completely dark, she went to visit Karakura town. She stood on top of an abandoned building, looking down at the rows of houses, similar to how we first see Rukia in the beginning of the series. It feels so nostalgic. Even though I've only left this place for a few months, this town contains so many unforgettable memories. Perhaps it was because she had so many memories of this place, it felt like she had lived here for so many years, as if she lived here most of her life. Sitting on Ichigo's back when he became a Shinigami, patrolling the town at night to perform Kanso, where did the time go? It felt like it was so long ago. The teenager, who had received the power to protect after he had met her, did his duty happily, yet also grumbling at the same time. Happy to protect all he can with his 2 hands. Wait for me, Ichigo. I will definitely let you regain your powers. If it's the last thing I do. With determination in her heart, Rukia leapt into the pitch-black night sky. Flying past one house after another, she finally arrived at Urahara's shop. When she saw that the outer door was still open, she turned her head sideways. Closing time should have been a long time ago, so why is it the doors are wide open? As if attracted by the light streaming out of the door, she walked closer and heard a familiar voice shout angrily from within. She looked through the glass window and saw a familiar figure yelling inside the shop. A red jumpsuit and 2 golden pigtails by either ear, it was Surugaki Hiyori. Since the paper door that separated the store from the living quarters was open, she could see the store's owner Urahara Kazuki sitting on a tatami mat inside the living quarters. With his usual grin plastered on his face with no care in the world. What are they doing? While silently asking this to herself, Rukia finally had enough of snooping around from the outside and said, "Excuse me," and opened the inner door. At the same time, Hiyori's angry shouts filled the store. "I said I wouldn't do it. How many times do I have to repeat myself? Are your ears blocked? Baldy. Now, Hiyori-san, you shouldn't shout so loud, the neighborhood can probably hear you. I'm leaving." Hiyori turned around while Urahara shrugged, and saw Rukia still frozen in a state in between opening the door and standing outside. She mumbled, "You are." Meeting her gaze, the nervous Lieutenant Rukia nodded at her. Hello, Kazuki. You have a guest." Hiyori turned around and shouted towards the living quarters. "A guest? At this time of night I wonder who it could possibly be," he said in a cheery voice. Urahara stood up while mumbling. When he saw Rukia standing behind Hiyori, his eyes turned very round. "Well, now if it isn't Kuchiki-san. It's been a while." He hurriedly put on his clogs and walked into the store. "I heard from Yoruichi-san. You recently became a lieutenant. Congratulations." "Ah, thank, Uwa." Before she had a chance to finish her sentence, Hiyori grabbed her by the collar and jerked her right under her eye. Their faces were so close that their foreheads were almost touching. "Hey, 13th Division. Do you know Hiriko Shinji?" "Ah, yes, may I ask how come?" Under this sort of close-up interrogation, Rukia's eyes were starting to water. "Listen up, if you see that baldy Shinji, you need to tell him, this is from me, and then give him a good kick on his bald head. Understand? I will help you. Relate that as such," Rukia said with a nervous expression. "I'll leave it to you." After she said this, Hiyori let Rukia go and pulled down the zipper in front of her jumpsuit. Under both people's gazes, she grabbed fistfuls of the pastries on the shelf and started stuffing them inside her jumpsuit. "Ah, Hiyori-san, you can't just take the products like that. At least wait until I'm not here to take them." Hiyori completely ignored him and continued to stuff pastries inside her clothes. Her slim figure instantly bloated up to one similar to a snowman's. She only stopped when her clothes were completely stuffed full and turned around to stare at Urahara. "This is all because I had to come to this store full of annoying baldies to listen to stuff I didn't want to listen to. It's completely natural to take some stuff as restitution." Hiyori wasn't at all sorry but instead pushed open the glass window and left. Some candy spheres leaked out of her clothes as she left. Urahara grimaced and picked up the candy spheres, before silently closing the window. What was wrong with Surugaki Dono? It seems like she was very angry. That's because the store's become quite busy as of late, so I asked Hiyori-san if she could come work here. Looking at the bright red hand mark on Urahara's face, she guessed that negotiations fell through. "You're so busy that you don't have enough help." That was quite surprising, Rukia thought. In this store, other than Urahara, there was also Tsukubishi Tessai, Hanakari Jinta, and Sumugia Ururu who worked as his employees. At a pastry shop in a suburb that didn't even have many major roads, she didn't think there would be a need for more workers than the ones he already have. Even if he was selling to Shinigami, he still shouldn't have all that many customers. It's true that we're really busy. Before, when we were only smuggling some stock and then secretly selling it, I could even do it alone, but after that big battle, it seems like we've been officially recognized by Soul Society. Because of that incident, Urahara Kisuke's name became widely known among the regular Shinigami. The ones who were deployed to the living world all came to shop there. So it's like that. Then they won't go after your crimes anymore. That's right. It seems like the Captain Commander went and talked with the Central 46. All the judgments against Tessai-san, Yoruichi-san, and me from 100 years ago have been invalidated. Everything was part of Aizen's plan. I was blameless, like that. The Central 46 was composed of 40 people known for their wisdom and 6 judges. It was Seoul Society's highest ruling body. If trust in the Central 46 disappeared, then order would very quickly disappear in Seoul Society. That was why it was hard to believe that any of their rulings would be invalidated. Rukia stood there and listened as Kazuki rambled on. Since all of the longtime members had been killed by Aizen, the captain commander of the Gotei 13 Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni had taken on their duties while new members were being chosen. His record during the time had been praised by everyone, and when the new Central 46 had started up, his words still carried with them a certain weight. That was why previous decisions were able to be taken up again. Kazuki sighed. It's been so long. Urahara looked down. 100 years. He had continued to single-mindedly pursue his research. In the end, he still couldn't undo Shinji and the others' hollowification. Just using the tactic of going to one's inner world and defeating the inner hollow, they had already used all their strength to stop it from progressing. Hirako-san and the others have gotten their captain positions back, how wonderful. He murmured to himself as he opened his eyes again, only to see Rukia staring directly at him. What is it? Urahara turned his head sideways as he asked. Thank you so much. Saying so, Rukia lowered her head. She was thanking him both as the lieutenant of the 13th Division, and also from the bottom of her heart. If it wasn't for his help and the advanced technology under his command, it wouldn't have been possible to capture Aizen. Urahara winced and laughed. Please stop already. He seemed very much embarrassed as he scratched his face. Even though I didn't come to the living world willingly, but I'm very much satisfied with my current life. Rukia nodded and said, is that so, with a peaceful expression. She then smiled as well. Well then, did you need something important today? Let's not stand here talking. Please come in. They walked together into the living quarters and sat facing each other across a low table. Today, Inoue came to Seoul Society. Rukia related what Orihime had said about Ichigo to him. After he had heard everything, Urahara murmured, so it's like that, with a knowing look. I want to figure out a way to bring his powers back. It can't be that there is no way. If there's anything that I can do, then I will definitely not decline. That's why. Seeing the pleading look in her gaze, Urahara sighed and said, you're one step late, what does that mean? Rukia looked extremely confused. To tell the truth, I've already started researching this, from the moment when Kurosaki-san lost his powers. Urahara. Her eyes were completely round by now. Urahara continued. The root reason why Kurosaki-san lost his powers is because I made the Hogyoku. From the time when he had no choice but to use Mugetsu, I had started to think about a way to bring back his powers. He could still remember the look in his eyes the very second when he lost his powers. It was like that of a lonely child who had lost his support. I originally wanted to report when my research had come to fruition, so I could properly scare everyone. I've let it all slip. Urahara sighed loudly on purpose. Don't look at me with a grudge, which made Rukia laugh. Please give me some more time. I will definitely complete it for you. Faced with his honest words, Rukia nodded forcefully again. Almost Ichigo, I'll make sure you get your power back. 7 months later, 2 days prior to present day. About several months went by before Rukia was contacted by Urahara again. When she received his message, she hurried to his shop. Under Tessai's guidance, they walked through various white structures in a corner of the underground chamber. Quite a few unidentified machines were placed closely together here, and the floor was covered with innumerable cords and lines. This was Urahara's research lab. Hidden underneath his shop, obviously not meant for the public eyes. Owner, Kuchiki Dono has arrived. Tessai called into the depths of the lab. Okay, send her and please come in. Urahara's voice came from somewhere nearby. But with all the static and noise being emitted by the machines, Rukia couldn't tell exactly where his voice was coming from. I'll take you there. This way, please, watch your step as you can see the place is quite packed. Hey now, it's almost like you're saying it's messy. Thank you, Rukia nodded and murmured quietly. She walked carefully behind Tessai, who led her to the so. She still almost tripped and fell. Luckily Tessai noticed immediately and said, danger. Since he grabbed her by her uniform collar, she didn't fall, but instead dangled in midair. Is it okay if we continue on like this? Rukia was asked by the former Kido commander. No, please let me down as soon as possible, she protested, blushing, before she was set down again. After that, she carefully watched where she stepped and managed to find Urahara without further incident. Welcome, Kuchiki-san. There seemed to be a bit of a disturbance. What was the matter? Asked Urahara, who had been watching a giant monitor. What disturbance? There was no disturbance, just these power cords on the floor. That's not it, it's impossible. Ururu-chan and Jinta managed to trip and fall beautifully each time. Even though I didn't think they would, I put the cords there just so they could arrive without incident. But let's get back to the main topic. Exactly. Let's get back to the main topic. Rukia felt responsible for allowing their conversation to stray. Urahara shrugged slightly and said, "Okay, sorry. Well then Tessai, if you would please." "I understand." After receiving Urahara's instructions, Tessai pushed a cart in the corner towards Rukia. On the cart was a transparent cylinder measuring 65 centimeters across, and roughly 120 centimeters in height. Inside the cylinder was a glowing sword. It swayed slightly and didn't have a distinct shape, giving off a warm yellowish-white light. "This is the sword that will transfer spiritual power to Kurosaki-san." Transfer spiritual power? You mean the transfer of Shinigami powers? Is that to say that this is a Zanpakuto? Ordinarily, transferring Shinigami powers required stabbing another with one's own Zanpakuto, transferring spiritual power, allowing the other to turn into a Shinigami. It's quite similar, but this is not a Zanpakuto. However, it follows the same process of power transfer. Thanks to Isshin-san, I was able to use Engetsu as a base to make it. Ichigo's Zanpakuto Zangetsu was very similar in nature to his father Kurosaki Isshin's Zanpakuto Engetsu. Restoring his Shinigami powers, along with his bond with his Zanpakuto and the transferal of powers, Isshin's help was absolutely necessary. I finally completed researching the process to make this sword a week ago. And when I asked Isshin-san for help, he said he wanted to think about it. Restoring his powers meant that Ichigo would return to the battlefield. As a father, Isshin's concern was completely natural. A week ago, Ishida-san was attacked by someone. Also Keigo was put in some psychological coma, not even Orihime-san's powers could wake him up and Uiryu doesn't want to be healed. The sudden news gave Rukia a great fright. "What? Who was it? How are his injuries?" she asked, trembling. "It's not clear who did it. Ishida-san is currently in the hospital, and it seems like his life is not in danger." Rukia calmed down a little. "So it's like that," she let out a deep breath. Because Ishida-san was attacked, Kurosaki-san probably realized again how powerless he was. Despite me telling him I'll handle it, last night Isshin-san came and said that he would help, probably because he didn't want to hear Kurosaki-san like that anymore. Isshin was once unable to save his beloved wife Kurosaki Masaki from a hollow. He knew better than anyone the pain that results from not being able to protect someone. "I know that we can use this sword to transfer Shinigami powers, but isn't the strength of the powers after the transfer proportional to the amount of power put in? If Ichigo wants to have the same strength that he had before, then this will require a great deal of Ryutsu." "That's right, I know. That's why we need everyone to give their Ryutsu to this sword." Hearing this, Rukia's eyes became very round. Everyone needs to give their Ryutsu, that is correct. Urahara sat up straight. This will be a very difficult process. One's Ryutsu was similar to a fingerprint. No two people have exactly the same Ryutsu. In Soul Society, one of the reasons why transferring Shinigami powers was a grave crime was because giving someone else your Ryutsu was similar to giving them your own identification. Mixing different kinds of Ryutsu together was a very difficult matter. The technology that would allow two or more kinds of Ryutsu to exist in one object still did not exist in Soul Society. Everyone in the living world has already given their Ryutsu to this sword. Hiyori-san, Aikawa-san, Hachigan-san, and both Tessai-san and I as well. Everyone came to help, yes. After I contacted them, they came immediately. Hachigan pressed both hands together in front of his chest and said, "I can finally repay Kurosaki-san's kindness." Love smiled and said, "As a man, I have to repay this favor." Hiyori bared her fang and mumbled, "Ichigo was the one who defeated Aizen in the end, this is his thanks." The three of them gathered and put in their Ryutsu in order. "Are we going to the convenience store? It's so annoying how you stand there and read forever. I want to go to the pharmacy on the way," they said as they left. It seemed like they were all very happy in each other's company. Then, I'll do it too, but as Rukia's hand was about to touch the sword, Urahara stopped her. "Please wait. I want to let you Kuchiki-san be the last person to add her Ryutsu." "The last? That's right. The Ryutsu added to this sword will not mix together, but rather will layer on top of each other like rings in a tree." Urahara closed his fan and used it as an example in his explanation. "Kuchiki-san will be the outermost circle, that is to say, yours will be the very first Ryutsu to go into Kurosaki-san's body. With Kuchiki-san's Ryutsu as the sword's outer covering, everyone else's Ryutsu will mix better. This is because Kurosaki-san has had Kuchiki-san's Ryutsu in him before. So it's like that. Then I will be the last person to add it. Seeing her nod, Urahara removed his hat and placed it against his chest. I'll be relying on you, he said as he bowed slowly. I will also be relying on you. Rukia returned the bow. Well then, I will start the preparations to bring this sword to Soul Society. Before tomorrow comes to a close, I will bring it to Kuokaku-san's place in West Rukongai. Can Kuchiki-san help me notify everyone? Yes, leave it to me. Sending so many hell butterflies will be too noticeable. When you contact everyone, please do it either in person or through a text. The Research and Development Institute shouldn't give you any trouble about the texts. I'll take care of that. The Research and Development Institute commonly kept a watch on communications in Soul Society. No matter what channel it went through, be it hell butterflies, spirit phones, or even tentikura, all illicit communications were reported and investigated. If investigations found that laws were broken, then it would be reported up to the chief of the Research and Development Institute, Kuritsuchi Mayuri. And then according to Mayuri's judgment, he would send the information to either Yamamoto or the Onmitsukido for the individual to receive appropriate punishment. Urahara used his own computers to hack into the Research and Development Institute's surveillance mechanisms. For all of tomorrow, he made it so that it would not interfere even if they discovered the texts asking about transfer of Shinigami powers. Since he had been the one who invented the mechanism over 100 years ago, he knew his way around it. Your work is progressing so quickly. Since Ishida-san has been attacked, this is now a pressing matter. That's right. Goodbye then, see you tomorrow. Rukia looked nervous as she started to leave. Ah, see you tomorrow. Also, watch your step. Before Urahara had a chance to finish, Rukia managed to get trapped by a bundle of cords and fell flat on her face. Are you okay? Urahara asked. Tessai walked up to Rukia, who was trembling in pain and embarrassment. Clearly I need to help you out of here. He picked her up by her collar and started to carry her outside. Aiya, stop it. I can walk by myself. Hey, can't you hear me? I said stop already. Put me down. Bastard, why won't you put me down? I'm asking you to put me down. Rukia's cries of despair slowly receded into the distance. Urahara watched them leave, while also figuring out how he would handle the communications this time. 7 hours later, 13th Division offices. The next morning, Rukia arrived at her office even earlier than usual. She held her spirit phone with a serious expression and started to think of what to say to those whose help she sought. Just as she was deep in thought, the time crept closer to the start of the workday. The third seat of her division, Katetsu Kion, called out. Good morning, as she entered the office. Good morning, Katetsu Dono. Rukia hurriedly stood up from her seat and bowed. You don't need to stand up. I mean, you've already been lieutenant for about the last 7 months, and if the third seat comes in then all you need to do is reply, okay. If you understand then don't stand there anymore, sit down, sit down, sit down. Yes, I'm very sorry. Kion watched as Rukia leaned back against her chair again, and laughed. And still apologizing, she then sat down as well. Ordinarily there would only be 2 desks in this office, for the captain and the lieutenant. However, since Captain Yukitaki was not well and could not come to work very often, the 13th Division had 2 desks for his support officers. Ring, ring, ring. The bell indicating the start of the workday started to ring across Seraite. I'm going to be lot. Right when the bell stopped ringing, the other third seat Katsubuki Sentaro slid into the office. Safe, I was almost out. Hey, what are you doing, Lieutenant? Why are you still standing? Rukia had stood up to say, good morning, to Sentaro, but she remembered what Kion had said and sat back down, embarrassed. Lieutenant, I wasn't late, was I? Sentaro asked, slapping both his hands down on Rukia's desk. Baka, of course you were late. Tell him, Lieutenant. Kion left her seat and came over. The two of them slapped wildly at each other, while both staring at Rukia trying to prove either was in the right. First let's all calm down. Rukia held out both her hands, trying to calm them down. However, her right hand was still holding the spirit phone and the two of them were able to vaguely see what she had already written. In order to allow Ichigo, who has lost his powers, regain his Shinigami powers once again, hey, is this real Kuchiki, Lieutenant? What are you up to? Pressed by their questions, Rukia hesitated for a few seconds before seemingly reaching a determination. Urahara Kazuki has invented a sword that will allow Ichigo to regain his powers. As long as everyone puts their Ryutsu into it, then we can give Ichigo back his Shinigami powers. But this is an illegal transfer. Put mine in as well. Put mine in as well. Both Kion and Sentaro spoke up at exactly the same time. Why are you copying me, you big beard? You're copying me, you monkey woman. What did you say? Want to fight? Watching the two of them pressed against and staring at each other, Rukia bowed deeply. Thank you, very much. When she raised her head again, she smiled. But first stop fighting. You don't need to thank us. Before I always thought that Kuchiki always followed her heart, and I admired that. That's why, now that I've come across a difficult decision, I'm also going to follow my heart. I've decided. Plus Ichigo gave up his powers to save us all. Kion laughed, embarrassed. Even though I don't want to agree with this monkey woman, that's how I feel too, Kuchiki. You should allow your senpai to do something admirable now and then. Sentaro poked her forehead with his forefinger. Ah, this is sexual harassment. How dare you do that to the lieutenant, you smelly vile bearded short man with bad breath. You said that I smelled twice, you bastard. What if I really started to smell? But you do smell. Looking at the two of them arguing, Rukia laughed softly. Ever since Rukia became a lieutenant 7 months ago, the two people who never left her side and never stopped supporting her were Kion and Sentaro. Even if some people said that she only became a lieutenant due to the Kuchiki family's influence, they would immediately get attacked by Kion and Sentaro until they took back their words. The two of them always dragged her out of the office when she shut herself inside. They would then bring along the ordinary division members on trips to the sweet shop. Sometimes they all went gardening and ended up covered in dirt and mud. Other times they went visiting other divisions. Afterwards, the division members who weren't familiar with Rukia soon started becoming friendly. Good morning, Lieutenant. I made a lot more of that chestnut-flavored red bean sticky soup that Lieutenant had last time. Listen to me, Lieutenant. Third seat Katetsu went too far. Ah, Lieutenant. I picked a lot since there were so many of them, so if you'd like then please put these flowers in the office. Are you leaving? You've worked hard, Lieutenant. Everyone slowly started talking to her now and then. Then who are you sending it to? Kion asked her after she had finished writing the message. First I'll send it to the people whose addresses I know. The 4th Division's Yamada Hanataro is with Captain Hitsugaya's team, but I think it's best to send it to people other than Captain Hitsugaya. Yeah, of course the captains can't break the laws. Sentaro yelled. Okay, then we'll need to keep Captain Yukitaki in the dark. I'll go talk to my sister first. Before Rukia even had a chance to say, I'm relying on you then, Kion picked up her own spirit phone and ran outside. Yosh. Then we'll need to take care of today's business as quickly as possible. Sentaro rolled up his sleeves and started to separate out the day's important paperwork onto the 3 desks. Katsubuki-kun, no matter how you look at it, my stack is a bit thin. The stack on Rukia's desk was only half as high as those on the other 2. You need to arrive at Kuokaku-san's before the 2 of us to start a discussion with everyone. So this much is enough. Sentaro sat down, his face a bit red. Thank you very much. Rukia placed both hands on her desk and nodded. Sentaro grimaced and laughed. No need to thank me. You need to buck up. You're our superior officer after all. Send that message out already. With his encouragement, Rukia hit the send button with a prayer in her heart. Please forgive this sudden disturbance. I am Kuchiki Rukia of the 13th Division. I have heard lately that Urahara Kazuki has completed a method that will allow substitute Shinigami Kurosaki Ichigo to regain his Shinigami powers. It requires many different Shinigami to give their Ryutsu to a special sword, which will be transferred to him via stabbing, allowing him to turn into a Shinigami again. This is an illegal transfer of Shinigami powers, against the laws of Soul Society, and will result in severe punishment if discovered. I hope that those who have thought this over yet still wish to help will gather today after the workday is over, at the house of Shiba Kuokaku in District 1 Junrinan of West Rukongai. 4th Division corridor in front of admin offices MMHMM. Right, like that. However, Katetsu Azane leaned against the wall as she spoke on the phone. She had a troubled expression on her face as she listened to her sister Kion. After she heard the news about transferring Ryutsu, Azane was still a bit confused about how to answer. She wanted to do everything she could, but breaking the law would complicate matters for her revered Captain Unohana. And that was something that she just couldn't ignore. Isn't my sister really thankful for what Kurosaki Ichigo did? Isn't that right? If you put it that way then yes, well that's settled then. Thanks for the help. Wait a second. Keon. She pressed the phone close to her ear, but didn't hear any reply from Keon. Azane looked at the screen that said the call had ended, and mumbled to herself, she hung up, what am I going to do? Just as she clutched her head in frustration, Azane felt a sudden pat. What is it, Azane? She looked back in tears at the owner of the hand, Unohana Retsu, who was questioning her with a kind tone of voice. After they went back into the admin office and after she had heard the entire story, Unohana only said, so it's like that, before going silent. Like I thought, it's not okay. Azane looked down at her two hands as they twisted together and said, no matter what the reason might be, we can't break the laws, just like I thought, I have to stop Keon. She waited a while and realized that Unohana hadn't replied at all. Captain. She lifted her head, unable to stand this silence, and saw that Unohana was looking at some documents as if nothing had happened. What is it, Azane? I didn't hear anything at all. Unohana looked outside, truly as if nothing had happened. The weather today is so wonderful. It's really quite rare to get weather like this, perhaps everyone should leave early today to enjoy it. What do you say, Azane? As she looked back, her smile was warmer even than today's sky. Captain, thank you so much. Azane bowed deeply and said, then, I'll let each station know. She then flew out of the office. At the same time General Medical Station Pharmacy, Hanaduro, who was busy looking for today's medicines, also received Rukia's text. After he read it, he gripped his spirit phone tightly. I have to try harder to finish all this up earlier, he mumbled to himself. The Shinigami in the 4th Division, who specialized in healing and logistics, were weaker in terms of fighting ability than those in the other divisions. Because of this, they were looked down upon by the other divisions, especially the 11th Division which specialized in fighting. They were often given extra tasks that had nothing to do with their duties, so working overtime was nothing new to them. It'd be great if you finished up earlier, 7th seat Hanaduro. His fellow 4th Division member and 8th seat Ogido Harunobu had been standing by a nearby shelf and heard him mumbling, so he decided to respond. Sorry. Did I disturb you? How could you? Not at all. I just overheard you so don't let it bother you. Seeing him smile, Hanaduro let out a deep breath. However, today, you have a date. No, that's not it. No. Hanaduro shook his head so hard it seemed like he was concerned it had become a puppet head that couldn't move. It's so easy to tease 7th seat Hanaduro. Ogido smiled while secretly thinking up practical jokes. At the same time, the window opened and 3rd seat Aimura poked his head in. Hanaduro, so you're here. I've been looking for you all day. He didn't bother to come in, and continued speaking through the window. Captain Unohana says that everyone can leave work today at 5 p.m. You can let your Team 14 know. Yes. I will let them know right away. Hanaduro might be looked down upon by everyone for his yielding personality, but he was the leader of Team 14 due to the strength of his healing abilities. Why the hurry? Is today special or something? Aimura held his chin and replied, no, it's because the weather is really nice today. Weather their heads might be full of question marks, but Hanaduro knew what was going on. Captain Unohana, it can't be because she already knows about that thing with Ichigo-san. If that really was the case, then that would explain why they were let out early today. Even if he had no proof, Hanaduro believed that this was the case. Then, I'm going back to my team. He bowed towards Aimura and Ogido and started running out of the pharmacy full of enthusiasm and also empty-handed. Hanaduro, you forgot this. He saw Aimura running after him with a medicine case labeled, Team 14 inches and suddenly kneeled without thinking, lowering his head. Some female Shinigami saw this and later said. 3rd seat Aimura made 7th seat Hanaduro kneel for him again. That is so excessive of him. I really hate being on a team with that glasses guy the most. In front of the 6th Division barracks. When Abarai Renji received the text from Rukia, he was in the middle of talking with Yuki Rikichi about his work diary. As he read it, he couldn't help but start mumbling to himself. What is she doing? That Rukia, doing this sort of stuff in secret. What are you mumbling about? Is that some sort of congratulatory text? Renji said, they've found a way to give Kurosaki Ichigo back his powers. He then handed the phone over with the text still open. Rikichi at first was laughing as he read it, but his expression gradually became more serious. Renji-san, could you forward this text to me? He asked as he handed the phone back. Sure, but, you want to join in too? Rikichi looked away when he was questioned and replied, yes. Let's not mention the lieutenants, but ordinary members probably won't even be given the chance to speak up for themselves before getting their throats cut. Even so, do you still want to join in? Definitely. I've already realized that people like me who didn't participate in either Hawako Mundo or Karakura have all been protected by Kurosaki Ichigo-san. As a member of the Gote 13, I have to do my best to repay him even a little bit. Faced with an opponent as strong as Aizen, there was nothing that he could have done. I'm sure there are a lot more people like me. If you send the text out to more people, then I'm sure that a lot of them will come. Even if individually we don't have much Ryutsu, but together we should be able to gather a lot, that's why, please help us. Seeing Rikichi lower his head, Renji punched a few buttons and forwarded the text to him. Take it. Thank you so much, Renji-san. I'll send it out to everyone right away. After he waved at me and said, oh. See you later, to Rikichi as he ran off, Renji forwarded the text to his classmates from the Shino Academy Kira and Hinamori. It'll be okay, he said, preparing to leave. However, before he had the chance, Waa. Captain. Right behind him was Kuchiki Byakuya. What are you yelling about? Asked Byakuya, who frowned at him. Hey, about that, it's better if I just show you this. Renji handed his spirit phone to him, with the text from Rukia still open. After he finished reading it, Byakuya immediately realized why Rukia had come home late last night, and said, so that was the reason, to himself. Captain agrees that I should go, right? Faced with this question, Byakuya frowned a little, surprised. Renji stood up straighter, vaguely feeling that Byakuya was about to get angry at him. Renji. Yes. Did you need to ask that question? Renji immediately raised his head when he heard this. There was no anger in his eyes. His expression was as sedate and calm as usual. It seemed like he had secretly agreed. Of course, go. No, of course there's no need. I'm sorry. Renji recollected himself and bowed deeply. Come back to work. Yes, Captain. He walked back into the admin office with Byakuya, patted himself on the face a few times, and dove back into his work. I am Abarai Renji, forwarding Rukia's text message to you. From Kuchiki Rukia, message from Yuki Rikichi of the 6th Division, forwarding a message from Lieutenant of the 13th Division Kuchiki Rukia. Us ordinary division members always use the tactic of regrouping immediately after we're scattered, so please think about this and decide. I believe that there will be no better opportunity to repay Kurosaki Ichigo-san's kindness. From Kuchiki Rukia, 10th Division Barracks Admin Office. Hitsugaya Toshiro was currently in the middle of reviewing reports from each section on the last few days' work. Matsumoto Rangaku, who had been lazing away and almost fallen asleep, suddenly yelled, "Waa!" and jumped off her chair. What are you doing? Hitsugaya looked up, so startled that his shoulders were shaking. It scared me since I forgot to turn off the spirit phone's vibrate function. Rangaku laughed while pulling out her spirit phone from her boob crack without any embarrassment at all. I say, why did you have to stick it in there? Because then there's no way that I'll lose it. Women shouldn't do that in front of other people. Ah. A text from Kuchiki. How rare. Since he was interrupted, Hitsugaya decided to ignore her. At the same time, Rangaku started reading the text. Hitsugaya frowned and turned his attention back to the documents. This sort of thing happened quite often, so he didn't continue the argument. That child wants to secretly do something like this. After she read the text, Rangaku smiled warmly while staring at the screen. Captain, want to look? Hitsugaya looked up from his documents with a surprised expression. Why are you showing it to me? Wasn't it sent to you? But the contents are of interest to you. It has to do with Ichigo. Kurosaki. What's happening with him? Ma, you'll know if you read it. Saying so, Rangaku forwarded the text to Hitsugaya. She added, I'll send it to Captain Kiraku and Naneo too, and put their names in as well. Abarai Renji, Matsumoto Rangaku, Madarame Makaku, Ayasagawa Yumashika, Yamada Hanaduro. Other than Hanaduro, the rest of them were all part of the forward team that were sent with Hitsugaya to fight the Urankar. At that time, they had all exchanged contact details to make communicating with each other easier. And they were aware when they received this text that Hitsugaya had been purposely left out. After she heard this, Rangaku just said, ah, that's true, in a very matter-of-fact way. What do you mean, that's true? Since you know, why did you still? So Captain, will you put yours in too? Your Ryutsu. Faced with this question, Hitsugaya did not respond. Rangaku turned her head slightly to the side, silently waiting for his reply. However, she already knew how her superior would reply, which was why she had forwarded it even though she knew why Rukia had left him out. Hitsugaya avoided her gaze, frowned, and let out a deep breath. Don't ask questions that already had answers long ago. Then he picked up a stack of documents at the corner of his desk. Finish these up already, Rangaku replied. Okay, stretched a little, and then sat up straight. Okay, I'm going to work really hard today. Hitsugaya sighed and replied, please do, and keep it up. This is from Kuchiki in the 13th Division. A very important matter that needs everyone's help. Please send it on. Matsumoto Rangaku from Kuchiki Rukia. 11th Division Barracks. 30 minutes after work started for the day, a person drifted along the corridor outside the captain's quarters, still only half awake. Her light pink hair was still sticking up in places and bounced along with her shadow as she walked. It was the lieutenant of the 11th Division, Kusajishi Yakiru. Ken-chan, wake up already, Yakiru yelled, knocking on the door. Stop knocking already. When Kenpachi came out of the door wearing his captain's haori, he saw that Yakiru had fallen asleep on the floor outside. Hey, Yakiru, get up. He picked her up by her belt and noticed that the floor was already covered with her drool. Che, so dirty, Ah, good morning Ken-chan. Yakiru scratched her face as if she was a little animal and was finally totally awake. Captain. From far away, they could see Madarame Makaku running over with his spirit phone. His shaven head shone under the morning sun's rays. Uho. Akaku stepped on Yakiru's spit and slipped. Ooh. He took a nasty fall. Aha. The baldy fell so prettily. Yakiru started clapping her hands and laughed as she watched. I don't know why, but it's so wet here. A vein was bulging on Ikaku's forehead and he knocked against the floor as he spoke to Kenpachi. It's Yakiru's spit. Hey, it's your fault then. Just as Akaku yelled at Yakiru who was still laughing, Kenpachi muttered, so damn noisy. He dug into his ear with his pinky and glanced over at Akaku. Is there something important? Yes, it's like this, please look at this. It looks like Ichigo can get his powers back. Akaku brought up Rukia's text on his phone and handed it over to Kenpachi. I want to see too. Yakiru scrambled onto Kenpachi's back from his arm and peeked over his shoulder at the spirit phone screen. Akaku looked annoyed but still said, this is, and explained the situation. No matter what, Akaku was still very considerate. At this time, they heard someone running towards them in the corridor. Captain, Kurosaki Ichigo, the person who turned a corner and appeared was a Yasugawa Yumashika. When he saw the three people standing in front of the captain's quarters, he instantly understood and shrugged. So Akaku got here first. Oh, you also got Rukia-chan's text then. Yes, it looks like she sent it to the forward team led by Captain Hitsugaya. There's probably a reason why she left him out. See, if you look here you can see who she sent it to. Yumashika held out his spirit phone and brought up the list. Akaku looked at it and said, what, only these people, and frowned. Rukia-chan knows that this sort of communication method is pretty limited, however, everybody continued to send it on. Renji should have sent it to his classmates Kira Izuru and Hinamori Momo. Rangaku-san probably sent it to those two in the 8th division. You're right, that is to say we should send it to Iba-san and them. Yes, I'll do it. Yumi, I want it too, said Yakiru, who took out her pink spirit phone. Okay, I'll send it to the lieutenant too. Speaking of which, it can really take in multiple people's ryutsu. What amazing technology, Yumashika said as he swiftly sent out the text, clearly having had a lot of practice. Akaku nodded and turned toward Kenpachi. It seems like his power level after the transfer will be proportional to the amount of ryutsu transferred, that is to say, the more we put in, the more powerful Ichigo will be afterwards. Isn't that right, Captain? Hey, so it's like that, Kenpachi laughed along with Akaku. This is the captain's order. Everyone in the division has to go put their ryutsu in. Even those with crap ryutsu will be useful if we get enough of them. Yes, Captain. Understood, Captain. As if they were waiting for the captain to come to this realization, the two of them quickly ran out. I'm going to tell everyone too. Yakiru sent the text to the Women's Shinigami Association with great enthusiasm. Ever since Aizen was captured, every day has been so peaceful and boring. If Ichigo gets his powers back, there might be some big fights again. The idea of going into battle again made both Kenpachi's ryutsu and the air around him bristle. Ken-chan seems to be looking forward to it a lot. As if responding to his excitement, Yakiru's heart also started beating faster. I am Ayasagawa Yumashika. I would like Iba-san to also take a look at this text that I've received, so I'm forwarding it along. From Kuchiki Rukia. This is the president. Ruki has a very important message for everyone, so be sure to read it. From Kuchiki Rukia, 5th Division Barracks Offices A. A sudden ring from her phone interrupted Hinamori Momo's work. Ooh, could it be a boyfriend? Hiroko Shinji laughed as he flipped through a fashion magazine. That is considered sexual harassment as well, Shinji, said Lisa, as she leaned against his desk and read adult magazines. She had come to deliver the fashion magazine that he had subscribed to, and also stopped to chat. I don't want to be called a harasser but someone who reads adult magazines in the open. You're so damn noisy it's distracting me, so shut up. You dare to speak to your customers this way. Is that what business people are supposed to say? Shinji pointed at Lisa's nose, criticizing her customer service. My business isn't affected by the loss of 1 or 2 customers. If you continue complaining, then I won't deliver any more magazines to you, okay? Lisa said as she continued to read her magazines with an expressionless face. No don't. Can you two quiet down already? Hinamori stood up and walked between them. Abarai-kun sent this, Captain and Lisa-san should see it too. She handed her phone over to Hiroko. Lisa leaned close to read it as well. Good going, Rukia-chan. The corners of Hiroko's mouth turned up as he handed the phone back to Hinamori. Momo, forward it to me. I want to send it to Rose and Kensai too. Yes, Captain. Hinamori nodded and started to forward it. Lisa didn't say anything and quietly walked out of the office. Hey, wait a second Lisa. Hiroko hurriedly shouted. Lisa poked her head back in the doorway. What is it? What is it? Are you going back? Yes, I am. If you're leaving, then you should say so first. If you go without saying anything, then I'll sink into this weird sort of, why did she leave without a word, atmosphere. Oh, sorry. I was busy thinking about what sort of preparations to do, preparations. Hiroko asked, confused. Lisa nodded forcefully. Since a lot of Shinigami are going to be gathering together, this is a great opportunity to expand my customer base. First I need to ask Kuokaku-san to let me put posters up on her house. Lisa started reciting her advertising strategy as she walked out into the corridor. What an amazing mind for business, Hiroko mumbled to himself as he forwarded the text to Rose, Kensai, and Mashiro. Okay, Momo, what do you plan to do? Hiroko put his phone on the table and looked at her. She was currently silent, thinking. Even though Rukia-chan sent the text, transferring Shinigami powers is against the law. If you don't want to go, you can just pretend that you didn't know that I'm going too. Seeing that there was not a shred of hesitation in her eyes, Shinji was a bit surprised. In his eyes, Hinamori was the most law-abiding and serious person that he knew, someone who would never break the law no matter what the circumstances were. Hinamori closed her eyes and said, of course, following the law is important. However, if you're breaking the law to do something that you believe is just and right, then maybe the real problem is with the law itself. If we're held back by the law and forced to let go of things that we should do, then that is wrong. Captain Eisen once said this. She responded naturally, as if she was quoting some great sage. Even though she still looked a bit melancholy, she had already improved a great deal when talking about those things that had happened 11 months ago. He did say some pretty things, that fellow, then can we say that I said it instead? Help me spread the word, Momo. How could I? That's too much. Hinamori laughed. After Eisen betrayed them, everyone always took care not to mention anything that would make her think about him. Hiroko was the only one who would talk about him without any sort of constraint. Of course he wouldn't bring up Eisen on purpose. He simply did not avoid the topic. This sort of normal conversation helped Momo's unhappy feelings slowly melt away over time. Okay, let's start working then. Captain, please put your magazine away. Then, I'll put it away as soon as I finish reading this special. Hinamori smiled as she watched Hiroko flip it open again. Do you want me to take it away? She asked, her smile not reaching her eyes. I understand. Hiroko quickly put it away. This is too much. Why is my lieutenant the only one who's so serious it gives one a headache? Hiroko complained as he flipped open documents. Yet even as he complained, he still smiled happily. This is Shinji. Look at this. I already told Lisa so you don't need to contact her. From Kuchiki Rukia, 3rd Division Offices. Good morning. Rose walked into the office, swinging a guitar in his hands. When he met Kira's gaze, the latter instantly looked very much annoyed. You're late, Captain. Kira pointed at the clock on the wall. From the time when the workday started, it had already been 40 minutes. Sorry, this child never wants to give me a break. Rose closed his eyes and slowly stroked the neck of the guitar that he was intoxicated with. Please do not place the blame on inanimate objects, Kira coldly interrupted. So strict. Rose put the guitar by the wall and sat down at his desk. Those sheets of music that I just finished, where did I put them? He started to shuffle around the documents on his desk, looking for his newest composition. Kira stared at Rose, who seemed to have no intention of working, and sighed deeply. He held out his spirit phone. Please first look at this instead. He put the screen in front of Rose. On it was the text from Rukia that Renji had just forwarded. Rose stopped looking for his music and his eyes widened as he finished reading it. His eyes sparkled with inspiration and he sighed, how incredible. He instantly picked up his guitar and started to strum it violently. It's starting again, Kira mumbled, annoyed, as he put his spirit phone away. The Gote 13 gathers together to aid Ichigo-chan. His strong voice filled the room. The laws that cannot be broken. The division members who are so confused and troubled, the melodies suddenly changed and became melancholy. The strong will that will never be broken. The glory that has been won. The best end. The melodies then became high-spirited again, and it seemed like he was going to break the strings of his guitar at the end. What do you think, Kira? That was good, wasn't it? Who knows, it could become this century's masterpiece. Faced with Rose's excitement, Kira replied, expressionless. Yes, it's great, but didn't you tell me that you wouldn't play that guitar here, Captain? If you can remember your promise and not play that here anymore, that'd be even better. Please don't use the tone of voice when you speak. How scary, Kira, I won't do it again, because the muse of music will not play without a smile. Even though he thought to himself, of course he's going to do it again, Kira had no choice but to soften his expression and said, thank you. It's a crime to force me away from my music. Rose put the guitar by the wall again, took out his spirit phone, and returned to his seat. I just received the same text from Shinji. He had received it 30 minutes ago, right when he was playing his guitar before work. He probably didn't hear the ring because he was so immersed in his music. Other than me, he also sent it to Kensai and Mashiro. Is everyone sending the text to their friends then? That's right. Abarai-kun sent it to both Hinamori and me. Then who will Kira send it to? Kira rested his head on his hand and looked down. The people that I can ask probably already received a text from elsewhere. No, actually Hisagi-senpai probably hasn't received a text yet. Hisagi, is that the tattooed child? The one with Kensai? Yes, he is the lieutenant of the 9th division. Isn't that the center of everything? Someone should have sent him a text already. Everyone thinks that, so in the end nobody will send him one. Kira's deduction was correct. Renji thought Rangaku would do it. Rangaku thought Renji would do it. Akaku and Yumashika thought that either Renji or Rangaku would do it, so in the end nobody sent the text to Hisagi. Oh, what a poor child. Yes, in some sense he is a very pathetic person. Kira calmly made that rude remark and forwarded the text to Hisagi. So, what do you mean? Is Kira going or not? Of course I am, he replied without a shred of hesitation. Without hesitation. How attractive. Rose whistled jokingly. Please do not joke about it. I don't have a really strong sense of justice. I just want to reduce our guilt for forcing him to sacrifice himself for us. And, he is also the last person who saw the captain alive. Ichimaru Jin's grave was located in the place where he and Rangaku first met, the 62nd district of East Rukongai, Withered Flowers. Rangaku had built it herself. Even though his cause was righteous, his actions were undoubtedly wrong and he was not allowed a grave inside Seraite. In front of that grave, Rangaku told Kira one last piece of information about Jin. When he saw Ichigo after he had learned Mugetsu, he closed his eyes and peacefully went on his way. Knowing that his revered superior officer had not died in despair, Kira felt like his own spirit had been saved. His face was full of melancholy, which made Rose's creative inspiration go wild again. Okay, we should get started and work hard. And afterwards I will definitely compose again. Of course he wasn't able to speak his innermost thoughts aloud. Yes, we should work hard. Kira didn't know what Rose was thinking and thought that his captain really was full of hard-working spirit. This is Kira. This is a text from Kuchiki Rukia of the 13th Division. Perhaps Senpai has already received this text, but I'm sending it just in case. From Kuchiki Rukia, 8th Division Barracks Offices. While Nanao was calmly taking care of documents, Kyoraku Shunsui came back from his morning patrol duties. Kyoraku always patrolled around the entire division every morning, in order to come into contact with as many division members as possible. If he saw any that were low on morale, then he would invite them to a bar later and help them talk about whatever was bothering them until they became happy again. Nanao-chan, have you seen Rukia-chan's text? He came straight to Nanao's side after entering the room. Yes. Just now, President, Lieutenant Kusajishi also sent a text with the same contents. Nanao put her pen down and pointed at her own spirit phone. Oh, I guess everyone is sending it along to their own friends. It looks that way. Then I'll send one to Yukataki too. Seeing him press on his phone, Nanao hurriedly stopped him. Wait a second, Captain. Is this right? Even if it's to save Kurosaki Ichigo, isn't this a great crime? Seeing her stand up, Kyoraku patted and consoled her. It's just passing along some news. It's nothing terribly bad. As for whether or not they're going to do it, that's something that everyone has to decide for themselves. Even so, but, okay, sent. Kyoraku stuffed the phone back inside his robes and returned to his seat. Then, what is Captain planning to do? Haha, what should I do? Speaking of which, what is Nanao-chan planning to do? Kyoraku asked as he rested his chin on his hands. Nanao opened her mouth, but then lapsed into silence. Kyoraku did not ask again, and only waited quietly for her to speak again. Not too long afterwards, Nanao made a determination. I'm going to go. This answer made Kyoraku's eyes widen. Nanao lowered her head, looking down at her two hands clasped close to her chest. I've always felt that it was unacceptable, that our current peaceful lives came at the cost of his great sacrifice. And I couldn't do anything to express my thanks. Ever since that battle ended, I've always thought so, and it's been very painful. Seeing Nanao do her best to express what was in her heart, Kyoraku smiled. Captain, if I lose my position because of this, you won't. Nanao was a bit surprised at his confident expression. It won't happen. How convenient that I've been thinking about this too lately. Kyoraku didn't seem worried at all. Yes, Captain. Seeing him like this, Nanao let out a deep breath and returned to her work. Nanao-chan, I have a little thing to take care of. Can I do today's work tomorrow? No, she replied without hesitation. Of course, sorry, I'll get started right away. Looking at the huge stack of work in front of him, Kyoraku sighed deeply. 7th Division Barracks. The lieutenant of the 7th Division Iba Tetsuziman was currently running about, looking for his captain, Komamura Sajin. At this time in the morning, Komamura was often with the barracks pet dog Guro, taking a walk and receiving news from the previous day at the same time. Even though other divisions sent the news into their offices, Komamura thought that this was something he could take care of while taking a walk, so he persisted with this policy. Iba heard that the captain is going over to the center court, so he ran over there. When he arrived, he heard that, sorry, you just missed him. The captain already left, so he ran elsewhere. After going back and forth a few times, by the time he finally found him, Komamura had already received all the reports, finished his walk, and arrived back at the doghouse. What's wrong, Tetsuziman? Isn't it your day to be on duty? Asked Komamura, seeing Iba completely winded with his sunglasses all crooked. Because I have something that I have to tell, Captain. Please sit down and rest first. You can report it after you've calmed down. Komamura pointed at a long wooden bench next to the doghouse. He had it specially made so he could sit down and play with the dog. Even if you say so, that bench was made especially for the captain. I'll sit down too. Is this okay? Komamura sat down first and gestured for Iba to sit as well. Iba bowed and sat down. He was still breathing heavily. Guro laid down by his feet and barked. Komamura was able to understand animal speech, and instantly started to laugh. No, Guro, Tetsuziman is resting today. He didn't bring anything. Today, what? Komamura leaned down and patted Goro's head. Guro is asking if you bought anything with you. He says that Tetsuziman usually brings something for him to eat. So it's like that. Sorry, Guro. I came empty-handed today. Iba opened both hands, gesturing that he didn't have anything. Guro barked disappointedly a few times and laid down at Komamura's feet instead. I hope he's not annoyed. Don't worry. He's always like this after a walk. Goro's white fur was bathed in the spring sun's rays as he stretched contentedly. What is it, Tetsuziman? Have you calmed down? Yes. I'm so sorry for taking up your time. However, I have something that I'd like the captain to look over. Tetsuziman took out his spirit phone and brought up the text that Yumashika had forwarded. He then offered it up with both hands and bowed. Please look. Komamura read over the text in silence and nodded as he handed the phone back. Tetsuziman, please don't say anything at all, Captain. Iba stood up from the bench and knelt in front of him. Captain, I've decided to go. If I don't repay Kurosaki Ichigo's great kindness to us, then it goes against what it means to be a man. Compared to the rules, there was something that Iba held even more dear, and that thing was his rule on what it meant to be a man. However, if I went and did it without letting Captain know, then that's the same as betraying Captain. I'm going to be causing trouble for Captain, so I'm extremely sorry. I hope that Captain will pretend not to know anything about what I've said or shown you today. Please, please. Iba lowered his head to the ground. Guro licked his face and barked at Komamura. Guro is asking, what happened? He's worried about you. Please raise your head, Tetsuziman. Iba looked up and Guro took the opportunity to place his front paws on his knee. He looked at Iba's eyes through the sunglasses and continued to bark. He says that, if you've been yelled at, then let's apologize together. After he translated what Guro said, Komamura couldn't help but start laughing. Iba also laughed and patted Guro on the head. Thank you. Komamura crossed his arms and looked up at the sky. I always follow the law because I want to repay Genryu Saidano's great kindness. I've said this many times, correct? Yes, I've always remembered it. That's why, Tetsuziman. That's why I can't believe that the Genryu Saidano that I respect is someone who forgets kindness as done to him, even if there's the matter of the law. Komamura directed his gaze away from the sky and looked straight ahead. He closed his eyes, yet both his ears kept twitching as if he was thinking about something. Guro barked and as if that was a signal, Komamura opened his eyes. Can you lend me the text message? That way, even if I cannot give any ryutsu to Kurosaki Ichigo, if Genryu Saidono asks then I can still do all that I can. I'm the same as you, in that I want to do something for the teenager. Captain, Iba's words of thanks were lodged inside his throat. Even though he did his best to suppress the excitement in his heart, it still came bubbling up. As if he felt moved by Iba's tears, Guro started to lick his face again. Iba adjusted his sunglasses and wiped off his face with his Shinigami robes. He then handed over his spirit phone and said, I'm relying on you. 9th Division, Seraite Communications Editorial Office. In order to expedite the editing and distribution of the Seraite Communications, there was a 2-story building in the 9th Division barracks that was called the Seraite Communications Editorial Office. Here, the first floor was in charge of printing while the second floor did the editing. It was built so that the newspaper could be printed as soon as the second floor finished its work. After he received Hiriko's text, Mugaruma Kensai left his office and started walking towards the editorial office. He stopped by the blackboard which indicated where all the workers were, and verified that Hisagi Shuahei was inside. However, after he stepped inside, he realized that this was in fact a battleground. Who thought of this headline? It's so cliché. Do it again. Hey, the number of pages in the special isn't right. Isn't it missing a page? The table of contents is ready. Can someone go get the manuscript from Captain Kyoraku? Since the deadline for proofreading was 5 in the afternoon, the atmosphere was very tense. In order to not disturb anyone, Kensai walked along the wall in order to reach the office of the editor-in-chief. Since he had refused the position, Hisagi was still in charge. In exchange, Kensai had to take on all of his lieutenant's duties before the proofreading was over. Shuahei, I'm coming in. Kensai pushed open the door without bothering to knock. Hisagi, who was currently looking over an ever-growing stack of manuscripts like his life depended on it, immediately looked up. Captain, why are you here? Is this to say that you've finally decided to take on the position of editor-in-chief? Of course not. Didn't I say that I'm never going to do it during this lifetime? You're so noisy. Really, during this lifetime? Hisagi laughed tiredly and looked back down at his manuscripts. Is there something else? I can't leave my desk right now. I understand. I'm looking for Mashiro. Do you know where she is? She's not answering her phone. He took out his phone and dialed Mashiro's number. From somewhere nearby came the sound of a phone ringing. Mashiro-san turned in her manuscript just now. Hisagi pointed at a long bench, on top of which was a rug that was all bunched together. The ringing sound was coming from beneath that rug. Hey, Mashiro. Kensai lifted up the rug and saw that she was currently curled up in a ball, sleeping peacefully. If she's asleep, then she won't wake up for a while. I know, so annoying. Kensai put the rug back on her. If she wakes up, then tell her to look immediately at Hiriko's text. Text? Are you talking about an electronic text? What happened? Kensai raised an eyebrow at his question. What? Nobody sent one to you? He handed it over for Hisagi to see. Both of his shoulders were shaking as he slowly said, "This is the first time I've seen it." So you don't have any friends then? Kensai looked at him in sympathy and walked out of the office. Who? Hisagi bit his bottom lip and forced himself not to cry as he looked blurrily at the manuscripts again. Half an hour later, when he saw Kira's forwarded text, he started to cry in silence. West Rukongai, 1st District, Junrinan, at Kukaku Shiba's house, the Ryutsu transfer party was currently in session. In order to avoid notice, they had set the sword up inside the house at the base of her giant cannon. Around it, they were setting up a tent that could completely stop anyone outside from sensing what was inside. Right now, they were setting up the most critical segment. Making me do this sort of thing, Captain of the 2nd Division Soifan complained while setting up the tent poles. Shihu and Yoruichi, who was doing the same, looked over when she heard Soifan's complaints. Didn't I already tell you? I'm not going on a walk like I usually do. In the end, you didn't ask any questions and persisted in saying, take me along too. Isn't that right? That's because, isn't that right? Yes, however, Soifan pouted and Yoruichi burst into laughter, patting her head. Okay, the games are over. It isn't too early to start now. You should go back to your division, Soifan. Yoruichi-sama, why so suddenly? Yoruichi explained slowly upon seeing her confusion. The person who is in charge of punishing those who are in violation of the law is you. As the commander of the Onmitsukido, you cannot do anything that is against the law. Do you understand, Soifan? But, Yoruichi grabbed her by the collar and started to pull her out of the tent. What is it? Are you done? Seeing the two of them like this, Urahara asked as he worked on something outside. Yes. Now Soifan is about to leave. Yoruichi-sama, I didn't say that I was going to leave. Even if Yoruichi had her by the collar, she was still doing her best to argue. That's right, as commander of the punishment squad, you can't do this sort of thing. Shut up. I will definitely not leave. I will not leave Yoruichi-sama alone with a shady shopkeeper like you. Not far away on the base of the cannon, Kuakaku heard this as she drank her sake. I'm here too, she joked. Next to her and helping her poor sake, her little brother Shiba Ganju also yelled, don't forget me. However, Kuakaku kicked him and yelled, don't shout in my ear. Shady shopkeeper, I've clearly been exonerated, you know. Shut up you. Okay, stop. Soifan. Watching Soifan try to leap at Urahara, Yoruichi laughed bitterly. Yoruichi-sama, please let me go. Just as she was struggling, a ringing sound came from her chest. Yoruichi stuck her hand inside Soifan's robes without hesitation, ignoring her cries and feeling around. This is it. She took out the spirit phone and let go of Soifan's collar. Soifan instantly sat down on the ground. Wow, Urahara took a few steps back after seeing how rough Yoruichi was. Here, it might be something important, she said as she gave the phone back to Soifan, who was bright red. She took a look at the text that Yakiru had sent and instantly changed color. Yoruichi-sama, this, she opened up the line and handed it back to Yoruichi. Right there, on the list of recipients was Kuritsuchi Nemu. This just got complicated. Yoruichi frowned and handed it to Urahara. Yes, he also prepared himself for possible complications. 12th Division, Lieutenant's Quarters. Lieutenant of the 12th Division Kuritsuchi Nemu was currently lying naked in the middle of the room and on top of a metal work table. Numerous wires and tubes connected her body with a large machine by the wall. Inside the room, there was a buzzing sound much like that made by the wings of an insect. Oh, it's being used up very quickly. Kuritsuchi Mayuri was staring excitedly at a screen, surrounded by keyboards and monitors. The lieutenant's quarters of each division were intended to be private rooms. However, since Nemu was an artificial being created by Mayuri, her quarters were converted to be her maintenance room instead. So it's like that. Mayuri opened his eyes wide and was about to type on the keyboard when a ringing sound came from behind. Che, what is this? He stood up and pulled the phone out of a pile of Nemu's clothes. On it was the text from Rukia that Yakiru had just sent to the entire Women's Shinigami Association. This is. I have to report this to the captain commander. Mayuri's eyes rolled around and he smiled as he picked up his captain's haori and put it on. Get up, Nemu. He pressed a red button on the metal table and a weak current flowed into Nemu's body. She opened her eyes. Good morning, Mayuri-sama. The numbers that needed to be changed have been loaded into the computer. You can take care of the rest by yourself, right? Yes, thank you very much, Mayuri-sama. Are you going somewhere? Nemu asked him as he walked out of the room. I have something to report, Mayuri laughed. In front of the 1st Division barracks, Yukitake Jushiro saw who had arrived before him and couldn't help but stare. Captain Komamura. As he came closer, he saw another person who had been hidden in Komamura's giant shadow. Captain Kuratsuchi is here too. Mayuri sniffed in displeasure as he heard his name. After he received Kyoriku's text, Yukitake immediately made his way to the 1st Division. On the way, Kyoraku texted him to say that he didn't finish his manuscript for today's Seraite Communications, and got yelled at by Naneo, so he couldn't come as well. Do the two of you need something? Komamura handed Iba's spirit phone to Yukitake, who looked very much surprised. Since you all have a phone, I guess we're all here for the same thing, he was correct. Both Yukitake and Mayuri were holding a spirit phone. Is that so? But, could you leave this to me? Kuchiki is my lieutenant after all, eh? Are you trying to protect your lieutenant, who's inciting everyone to break the law? Mayuri criticized him. It's true that this is against the law, however, I don't feel as if Kuchiki has done anything wrong. As her captain, I feel that I should do my part as well. Just as he was preparing to receive a new round of criticism from Mayuri, the door to the barracks opened and Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni appeared before them all. Behind him was the lieutenant of the 1st Division, Sasaki Chojiro. What a rare sight this is. Genryusai sensed the 3 captains' Ryutsu as he was working, so he decided to take the initiative and show himself. 3 captains have come. Has something happened? Genryusai-sensei. My lieutenant. Yukitake stepped forward to speak, but suddenly his spirit phone started to emit a sharp sound. What is this? Genryusai raised his eyebrows. Yukitake hurriedly looked at the screen and saw that it was full of emergency message markings. Answer it please. Genryusai nodded and Yukitake pressed the answer button. Reporting to Captain Yukitake Jushiro of the 13th Division. According to the substitute Shinigami badge held by Kurosaki Ichigo, there are signs of the previous substitute Shinigami. This is an emergency, please come immediately to the Research and Development Institute's Ryutsu Analysis Lab. I understand. I will go immediately. At the same time, Mayuri had received the same urgent message. Increase the number of people doing surveillance. I will come immediately. They exchanged glances. Mayuri narrowed his eyes and said, looks like we got the same message. Since this is urgent, I will have to take my leave, Captain Commander. He bowed respectfully and walked off. I will take my leave as well, Genryusai-sensei. I will come back to report later. Yukitake also bowed deeply and left. As he walked past Komamura, Yukitake turned and said to him, Can I leave the matter of Ichigo-kun to you? Leave it to me. After this brief conversation, Yukitake quickly walked off as well. Well then, let's discuss this. Komamura. Sasaki opened the door, and Genryusai walked back into the barracks. Yes. Komamura followed respectfully behind him. Shiba residence thin, flimsy clouds flowed across a sky that was turned a brilliant orange by the setting sun. The end of the day was coming. Ring ring, ring ring, ring ring. The bell signaling the end of the workday rang across Seraite. Many Shinigami had already gathered by now at Shiba Kuokaku's house, waiting their turn to add their Ryutsu. The earliest ones to arrive were the 4th Division members who were given an early dismissal by Unohana. Next came the people who finished up their work early after reading the text. There was already a long line by the time the dismissal bell rang. This was because the text forwarded by Rikichi ended up making its way across many of the divisions, gathering together many ordinary members. Are you interested in literature from the living world? You can subscribe to any kind of magazines that you want. There is absolutely no worry about privacy. Please come visit the YDM bookstore. Lisa called out and handed out flyers to the gathered Shinigami. The walls of Kuokaku's house were covered with many huge posters advertising YDM bookstore, steadily increasing its name recognition. The end of the line is over here. Would those in front please continue walking forward? The 2 Shiba house servants Koganehiko and Shiroganehiko shouted, keeping the lines tidy and moving. Neighboring people from Rukongai also came by to see what was going on and to sell refreshments to the Shinigami. The Shiba's house was so surrounded it was like a festival was happening. Ah, Kuchiki-san. You've been a huge help. Next to the sword's tent, Urahara made a noise of astonishment. I had no idea that it would spread to this degree, said Rukia. She had been amazed at the crowd that had gathered when she arrived. No matter what, we know that Mayuri is going to interfere. It's best for the Ryutsu transfer to go as quickly as possible. The two of them both agreed with Yoruichi. Everyone in line, please do not add your Ryutsu slowly, bit by bit. Do it all in one go. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Using a loudspeaker from the living world, Urahara called out to the line. Thanks to this, its forward speed increased dramatically. This way we should finish up earlier than expected. He let out a deep breath. Rukia agreed, looking at the end of the line. She then noticed something black fluttering towards them. It looks like we've been discovered, Yoruichi murmured, narrowing her eyes. It was a flock of black hell butterflies that were used to issue commands to the Shinigami. Urgent notification. Will all the captains and lieutenants immediately gather at the 1st Division barracks? Also, will Urahara Kazuki bring the sword in question to the captain's meeting area? The hell butterflies flew to each of the lieutenants and captains present and issued their commands. Afterwards, they gathered together in a flock and flew back towards Saraite. If he's asking Kazuki to bring the sword with him, it doesn't look like he's going to punish anyone. Even the captain commander has been changed. Yoruichi looked up at the sky with a happy expression. Every single Shinigami in the Gote 13 had been changed. Everything that Kurosaki Ichigo did impacted everyone's hearts that had been restrained before by the rules. Since it's like that, we should hurry. We can't make the captain commander wait for long. Urahara also laughed happily. The millions of years of the Soul Society traditions and rules changed by one man. You really are something special, Ichigo. 1st Division Barracks, Captain's meeting area, standing between the rows of captains and lieutenants that had gathered there and in front of Genryusai, Urahara explained the details of the sword that he had brought there. Just now, we received news through Captains Kuretsuchi and Yukitaki that the first substitute Shinigami has made contact with the inhabitants in Karakura town according to the Ryutsu detectors. The first substitute Shinigami, that's Ginjo Kugo. As soon as Hitsugaya mentioned the name, the atmosphere in the room instantly became tense. Kurosaki Ichigo finally fulfilled his purpose of being bait, and drew him out hiding. Mayuri looked at Yukitaki. Yukitaki remained silent and lowered his head with an extremely sad look on his face. That may be true, Mayuri-san, but Ichigo currently isn't in Karakura town, he's attending school elsewhere at the moment. Since Ginjo Kugo has made contact in Karakura, it was likely under the premise of drawing Ichigo out. Luckily Ichigo isn't there, so we don't have a moment to waste. Take that sword. Urahara Kazuki. Hana opened her eyes wide at hearing these words. Captain Commander, this is. No matter what, we were all saved by Kurosaki Ichigo. This time it is our turn to save him. Even if it requires violating our own laws, allowing such a debt to go unpaid would be the Gote 13's eternal shame. Genryusai stepped forward. This is the Captain Commander's order. All captains and lieutenants of the Gote 13 will add their Ryutsu to this sword. Genryusai's commanding voice rang through the silent meeting area. Even though I have received reports that many Shinigami have already gone ahead and added their Ryutsu without waiting for my order, I will not pursue this, only this one time. It was only after that several people on the scene finally stopped holding their breath. Mayuri stared at Urahara and ground his teeth so loudly that everyone present could hear him. Urahara Kazuki, you must definitely help Kurosaki Ichigo regain his Shinigami powers. Go to him and inform him. Urahara lifted his head and looked straight at Genryusai. The two eyes that looked back at him really did display confidence in him. I obey. Definitely. As if keeping his tumultuous feelings under control, Urahara bowed deeply. Shortly after, Ryutsu was put in the sword following Rukia going last so it could enter his body smoothly. Kazuki, how should we inform Ichigo? Should we tell him to come back home or should we go to him? Kazuki looked at Rukia and smiled. We're going to have him come back to Karakura town. It would be dangerous to go there with sword holding this much power. If someone is able to steal it by any chance, it could be bad if they were to absorb the sword meant for Ichigo. For example, if a human were to do so, it would cause them immediate death as their body wouldn't be able to handle the excess energy. If it's another soul reaper or supernatural being, the effects would be temporary at best case scenario, and at worst case they would explode from the mixing energies, and only a portion of that would go to Kurosaki-san. What do you mean by only a portion? I'm glad you asked, Rukia-san. I made several contingency plans in case the sword was stolen after the Ryutsu was put in it. I made it so that anyone that wasn't Ichigo tried to use it would explode due to it not being compatible with their bodies. But after it does explode, that mixed energy would be absorbed by Ichigo, but he would only get about 20 to 25% of it through that method. Which, as you can tell, would be bad because it wouldn't put him at a level near his old power, so that's why it's best to have him come back to Karakura town. 2 days later, present-day Orihime's house. Bang, 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 the sounds of knocking could be heard at the front door. I wonder who it could be. It's probably just Tatsuki coming over to check on me. As Orihime opens the door, the face of an older man wearing a button-up shirt and holding a book is there. Excuse me sir, but who are you? Do you need some help or are you lost? Staring at the orange-haired teen, the man smiles in a sinister way. Why yes, I do need you help, Orihime. I'll have you come with me. I mean, Ichigo is the man who attacked Uiryu and Keigo after all, don't you remember? Just as he finished his words, the book he was reading shut abruptly and he pulled his bookmark out of the book, and just as soon as he did, he swung his sword down, cutting an unexpecting Orihime, who fell to the floor holding her shoulder and was unable to react to his speed. The orange-haired teen then noticed there was no cut, no bleeding, and a phantom pain that was lingering. I swear I was just cut by a sword. I even felt it, but there's nothing there. I couldn't have imagined that. It felt too real. Why would a friend do something like that? And Ichigo couldn't have, I know it. Shocked by her own words, Orihime's eyes widened, realizing she just referred to her assailant as a friend, as if she knew the person. Something is wrong. I know I wouldn't refer to him as a friend after what he did. The plan's going well now. Orihime will start to have doubts about what my association to her is. She'll be essential of luring Ichigo back to Karakura, and once he see his friends in trouble, we're going to force him to go to Kugo for help to get his powers back. Sometime later, Kuo, Ichigo Kurosaki apartment. Ring, 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 hello. Hello Kurosaki-san, this is Kazuki. An irritated sigh could be heard on the other end of the phone. I could already tell that by the voice, dumbass. What did you call for anyways, Kazuki? I'm glad you asked me. I need you to come back to Karakura town immediately. Some things have happened. Orihime was attacked and we figured out how to return your powers. Ichigo didn't hear the last part as he was angry that Orihime got hurt and he wasn't there to protect her. He was already going to leave soon to see what happened to Uiryu and Keigo. I'm on my way to Kazuki. I'll be there in the next 30 minutes. Wait Kurosaki-san, it's a 2-hour trip. He hung up on me. Well, either way, let's get the preparations ready. Are you sure you're okay, Orihime? Rukia asked her, worried about her friend's health. Yeah, I'm fine, I just realized some minor details. So what did Ichigo say? If it was anyone else, Rukia would have brushed over it, but since it was Orihime, it was the first time she heard her address Ichigo without an honorific. But she chalked it up to her just being in a daze of being attacked. Why are they helping Ichigo after what he did to Uiryu and Keigo? He's a monster. They should be focused on helping Mr. Tsukishima is the one who saved us from Aizen after all. I have to steal this sword. I can't let them give that monster back his powers after all. Occult Research Club. 5 minutes later. Knock, knock, come in Ichigo, there's no need to knock. Seeing the distressed look on his face, all the club members were put on edge to what was bothering the teen. What's wrong, senpai? Are you okay? What happened, Ichigo? What's bothering you? As this was said in unison by Kiba and Akano. I need to go back to Karakura now. Is there any way you can get me over there fast, like that teleportation spell you used earlier today? One of my friends has been attacked and they need me. I need to get to them as fast as possible. Looking at Ichigo, Rias can tell right away this was important to him. But the spell in question is where the user sets up a platform in the form of their magic circle on which they stand on and prepare to be warped to their desired locations. The user can either transport themselves or items and other people. Depending on the user's own magic power, they can warp a whole group, while a novice is unable to make the jump even with another caster's magic. So there might be a chance that it won't teleport Ichigo since he is a novice to magic. However, wrapping between worlds is considered illegal, therefore must travel via a vehicle mode of transportation such as a train that travels through worlds. That also includes forbidden locations like Karakura town and the cities on its borders. I can get as close but not exactly at Karakura town, being that I've never been there before, so I'm not really familiar with its location, but I have been to Naruki City right next to it. Naruki City, Echoing Tree City, is a city which borders the west of Karakura town. Alright, Occult Research Club, let's get ready to go to Naruki City. I just pray this works for Ichigo as well. I'm on my way, Orihime. The underworld fallen angel territory, that peace-loving fool is going to be the downfall of our race. While he sits here and strives for non-conflict, the other races are getting stronger. I won't allow us to fall from the title of the strongest race. The world has been at peace for too long. Freed Selzen and Valper Galilei, I want you two to steal the Excalibur fragments from the church by any means necessary. As the man with long black hair and red eyes said in a commanding tone. Thinking about it now, once they are set off to steal the sacred swords, the church just might send him as retaliation. That's if he's still alive. Did you hear the news, Kokobile? This seemed to catch the Kadri class fallen angel by surprise, but also intrigued him to learn something he didn't already know. No, now enlighten me on it. The fallen angel Rainier was killed the other day by the devil scum that live in Kuo town. That's the area where the little sisters of both Sears X Lucifer and Seraphal Leviathan reside. This is a perfect opportunity while the world is unaware. Listen up, from here on out, I will start a war. I will take the heads of Rias Grimori and Sona Citri as a gift. Even if it's only me, I will continue from where we left off. I'm going to show Sears X and Michael that we, the fallen angels, are the ultimate beings. As long as I get to kill, I don't mind anything, ha ha ha. I get to finish my research and retrieve the holy sword Excalibur. A twisted smile could be seen forming on Valper's face. Now both of you head to Kuo and retrieve the swords. I'm going to send both Donasik and Kalawarna to assist you. Failure will result in all of your deaths. Also, I want you to also finish the task Rainier set off on and eliminate the sacred gear user Issei Hyodo. Please subscribe and like to the channel and support the author of this story, Will the Programmer.